money decisions don't have to be either or. With Bank of America, they can be yes and. Like yes to sunny vacations and rainy day funds. Can our digital tools and guidance help you create the future you want? Yes. And help you keep enjoying today, too. Do more with a bank that asks, what would you like the power to do? Explore our tips and more at bankofamerica.com/yes and.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
We're back for another week of our D3 Coaching Coordinator here on the Coaching Coordinator podcast. This one is presented by Hansen Ratings, who's joined us all season long to highlight some of the great performances in coaching at the D3 level. And as we hit the offseason here, we're looking back on the season and highlighting some of the statistical categories, the guys who have done the best, and some of the uncovered things that you have because of your rating system where you can see more of the big picture of what they've done. And today we're going to focus on the special teams side of things, looking at block punts and block kicks. One of the best in the nation at this in 2024, special teams coordinator at Maryville, Jake Flaherty.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to say one of the best. I think we can pretty comfortably say this was the best team in the country at blocking kicks and punts. They led the country in both blocked punts and blocked kicks. And it's not just because they were forcing teams to punt a lot and kick a lot. They led in punt and block rate as well. So just outstanding to be able to do it from both the punting side and from the field goal PAT side of things is outstanding. This season, their PAT field goal block rate was 32%. Just crazy to think about how many times they were getting after teams and getting their hands on kicks. And then on punts, they blocked 1 out of every 9 punts against them this season. This is one of those statistical things where if you weren't looking at the numbers and seeing it happen, it'd be hard to believe. But Maryville had something special this season getting after opposing kicking units. And I'm really excited to see what exactly they were doing on the special teams side of things. Something that we didn't get a chance to highlight a lot for this season was talking about special teams. So I'm excited to, learn a little bit more about teams that excel in the third phase of the game.
I think what's neat about this part is when you talk to coaches who excel in block kicks and block punts. And it's always an interest to me to get these guys on the podcast every single year. And last year we had Jeff Simmons from Carnegie Mellon. They were the best at it last year. And it's never scheme that these guys point to. It's the detail that they put into the techniques, the detail that they put into their game planning to find the opportunities. I think that's where these big opportunities exist, and I always love to bring those out. And we're going to have Coach Flaherty join us now to talk about that.
The holidays are back at Starbucks, and there's so much to share. With classics like Caramel Brulee Latte, Peppermint Mocha, and Chestnut Praline Latte, we're celebrating everyone's flavor of festivity. Order yours in the app.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/MBO. Terms and conditions apply.
As Logan talked about in the introduction, one of the best in the country at blocking kicks this year, the special teams coordinator at Maryville, Jake Flaherty. Jake, thanks again for taking the time to join us here, and congrats on a great year.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. I really appreciate you having me on. Longtime listener of the show, and really excited to be here and talk about this. Our players did a great job.
Jake, I usually do these at least one guy a year from a level that's led the country in blocking punts, blocking kicks, and I think the best part about this is there is no secret scheme to it. There's the details of it. And I always get a lot out of these conversations and hearing everything from the philosophy of how you're going to do it all the way down to some of the ways that you drill it and perfect it. So I would love to hear kind of the overall philosophy that gets this thing started for you guys, that you're able to go out there and block so many punts and kicks.
Yeah, it starts with the people first and foremost. Between finding the right players and being in alignment with the coaching staff, you want to find players that maybe aren't the starters, or maybe are the starters, but the guys that have the right speed, the right aggression, physicality, some length. You want some taller, longer guys to get to the block point, and they might be your starting receiver. They might be your third team receiver. They might be your starting strong safety, your backup. It's going to be a mix, but you can't be afraid to have your starters on these units. And that goes for special teams in general. You want to have the right 11 guys, including the returner who's going to be able to catch the ball back there. So having the right core guys, and sometimes it carries over to the other special teams units, but particularly with punt block, we use training camp as a method to evaluate who are the best blockers and get all those guys out there. So that's the goal.
Punt block is certainly a momentum swing when it happens in a game. And I mean, it's just a crazy stat Logan was sharing. You guys block 1 out of every 9. I mean, I don't want to punt against you guys. I mean, it gives incentive to not end up in 4th down, because there's going to be, potential for something bad here, higher percentage against you guys than anybody else in the country. In doing that, are you guys lining up to block all the time? Are you deciding between return and block, or are you kind of treating those things together?
So my first 2 years here at Maryville, we had different plays that I would call, whether it was just a regular hold up or a block or just being in safe punt return. And what happens is, throughout the course of the game, you get conservative and you don't really get to the block calls that you want to block, and that's partly being in alignment with your head coach and making sure that the number one goal on punt return is to get the ball back for the offense. That's really it. But this year, we kind of made the decision. We have the guys that can go get it. So we have a built-in call that we just go out and call, where you can either hold up or go get it, depending on where you are, in the structure of the formation. So we first want to identify the formation, and every week we, go through the formations, the punt formations. We want to identify the eligibles, make sure everyone's covered up. Okay, and then we identify the protection, right? We'll walk through how they protect their punts and where the matchups are, and then you have to identify the operation, the punter, the long snapper, things like that. So if you go through those 4 IDs, you'll have a pretty good idea of how the game's going to look, and it eliminates the thought process of, do I have to call a block here? Do I have to call a block here? No, it's all built in. If you have a chance to go get it, you can go get it. And but making sure we're built in with the parameters of covering the eligibles, covering down the formation, and checking. Because Division III, you kind of get everything. Sometimes the starting punter is the quarterback. Sometimes we played a team that the backup quarterback was the personal protector. So you have to kind of make sure, before you full sell and go after these things. We want to put our guys in the best position to not only go get it, but make sure we don't get fakes run on us.
There's a couple important things there in the way that you do things, and that it doesn't have to be an all out, here we come, because as you said, that's going to open up the opportunity for fakes big time, especially when you mention like some guys having the personal protectors, a quarterback, the guys who could do some things. And, it seemed like more fake punts this year in college football than have in a while, and very creative ways of doing it too, as people get into all kinds of different formations now. That's, I think, with shield punt's been around for a long time, but as people got back into using the shield in the creative ways that they're spreading the field and putting people all over the place, that it does become hard to account for where are the eligibles, right? So that starts with that process for you. You mentioned, just the structure and how you guys do it, that whether you're going to be, somebody going after the block, somebody who's on the holdup, et cetera. Is that something you're able to move around structurally? Because I know if you're bringing it from the same place all the time now, you become less able to maybe do those things as people start to scheme against that.
Yeah, so what we do and how we set it up is through how we practice. When we do our punt return in practice, we do it in a walkthrough setting, or as our head coach, Ben Fox, likes to call it, class on grass. And, the worst thing that you can do is put a scout punt team out there and have them, they've never done it before, and then you're telling them how to block something full speed. Guys get hurt that way. So we get them lined up in the formation. We explain who's eligible, who's ineligible, and that's going to determine, right, if somebody's going to come. Okay, so we have our corners outside covering the receivers. We have our edge players, and then we have our core kind of on that front line. And, really 5-6 guys are in that core depending on the formation. And, if we're in a situation where they have a clean release or they don't have to cover an eligible, they can make a run at it unless, they get blocked and, maybe they're opening it up for somebody else. But we try to be creative, and it changes week to week. Punt return is the one special teams unit that really changes week to week. You want to have some set parameters in place. You want contained guys. You want corners. You want, guys going into the shield all the time. But you can be creative with some of those other players, whether they're coming off an edge, whether they're in a 2-man twist or a 3-man twist, something like that. We just want to isolate matchups. If we can put 2-on-1, we'll do it all the time. So that's why we walk through, because you're going to get a team that's pro punt. You're going to get a team that's shield punt. You're going to get a team that's, almost in 4 receivers and punting, just to, you see everything. So, that's how it all starts, with formation recognition, eligible recognition, and then kind of going from there.
Looking at then getting into practice and the most efficient way to start to work this in practice. I guess let's take a step back. Let's talk about technique first. And some of the key techniques in getting the block, whether that's you're somebody, as you said, who's going to open up, and essentially block for that other guy to get through. And certainly the technique you like to teach for the guy who's getting to the ball. Would love to hear you talk about those things.
Yeah. So in terms of, blocking the punt, we talk about the drills that we run. We will bend the edge. We'll have some, drill where we can see who can come around the edge fastest and get to the block point, which we define the block point as 2 yards in front of the punter. Okay. And then we'll do a drill where we, do a middle rush where we see who can get through the middle and avoid the shield. And the goal on avoiding the shield is reducing that near shoulder and ripping. And when I rip through anybody, whether it's an outside block or an inside block, getting my hand above the head, getting skinny. And that's a transferable skill for any position in football. Right. And then when we get to the block point, we want to form with our hands, right? We don't want to swat at the ball, right? We're not playing volleyball, but we want to form with our hands, as our defensive backs coach would say, a diamond that you can afford, where your hands are so tight, that diamond is so small, right? Because, again, our guys can't afford anything. So, right, making sure that thing is nice and tight, right, so we can take the ball off the punter's foot. We want to slide our hands off the table, so to speak, and make sure we're kind of keeping our hands tight to the body, right? And a parallel that I use for the kids that use that played baseball, right? When you run, right, when you play center field and the ball's hit to you, you don't just stick your hand out and run all the way until you catch the ball. You run and then you throw up your hands late. So you gain speed as you get to the block point. So if you're coming from the edge, you want to come across the punter. You want to come across the punter so you don't square him up. That's a big coaching point that we use. If you square up on the punter, greater chances are you're going to run into the punter, and the punter is going to do some dramatic soccer leg dive, get a penalty. And then when you're in the middle, when you're coming through the shield, right, you want to get to a spot where you can pick a side. A lot of times it's that near side, near hand. You want a near hand bat, kind of a transferable defensive line coaching point, right? How defensive linemen tip the ball, right? Mirror the throwing hand, near hand bat, things like that. So a lot of these skills translate to our players because they play offensive and defensive positions. So the more you can get on the same lingo and the same language helps with that, along with throwing in some, key talking points that maybe you don't get discussed on either side of the ball. So we work an edge drill where we bend the edge to the block point. We'll work a middle shield drill where you have to go through the line, beat the shield to the block point, and then we'll slow it down and we'll just partner up, and one guy will be the punter and then one guy will be the blocker where has his hands in running motion, and when he sees the punter raise his foot, all right, shoots the diamond. So we try to just each stage from the ground up that we try to work.
Yeah. Do you do anything where they get the feel for taking that ball off the foot, actually blocking it? Any kind of drills you use there, or is it more emphasis on getting to that point?
Yeah, so it's built in. So the bend the edge drill and the middle rush drill, we will use a punter or a backup kicker to catch and place the ball. And we actually use a football. I know people use volleyballs and soccer balls and things like that, but football is oblong. It's different. It's not as wide of a base. So we want to simulate and we want to visualize taking the ball off the punter's foot. So the kickers and punters who are normally hanging out in practice will help us with those drills. So we kind of get the approach to the ball and the finish on the ball, because we don't, again, when we come all together with the scout punt team and the scout and the punt return unit, we do that in a walkthrough setting. So we do all the full speed, full intensity stuff and drill work.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give the fan favorite Everywhere belt bag, the real gift is... And when the ultra-soothing Rest Feel slides are the gift, you're really giving them... This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give little luxuries that go beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
'Twas the nights before Christmas. Despite last-minute stress, few were delivering except Walmart Express.
Stockings were hung by the fireplace with care, knowing in about an hour stuffers would soon be there.
On to the road, Walmart Express delivery went. Chock full of wondrous things in the St. Nick of time sent. Let's go!
Get express delivery in as fast as an hour, even on Christmas Eve. Orders must be placed by 4 p.m. local time on 12/24. Subject to availability. Fees and restrictions apply.
Express delivery to y'all and to all a good night. Welcome to your Walmart.
Just thinking about those times where you don't get to the ball, what are you emphasizing then for, especially those guys who have come through the line deep and obviously are farther behind the play now? What are you coaching them up to do that, that they just don't turn into a fan watching the play from back where they missed blocking the kick?
Yeah, they got to get on the screen. They got to find and locate your nearest man. And we work in our punt return circuit, just regular return circuit, being in phase, being out of phase, and you just once the ball is punted, you become a punt return player. And whether you're in a position to, if you're out of phase and you have to scrape paint to get back in phase, or if you're in phase, you can latch onto somebody, transition and sync. Okay. And then as that punt player transitions, you transition with him, follow near hip to near hip and play football. The big thing with, when you get into the blocking world, you have to realize you have to have somebody that you really trust back there as a returner. And oftentimes I call our punt returner our punt catcher, because you want the guy that's going to catch the football. He's not going to let it bounce. He's going to get to the spot. He's going to sprint to the spot, stay square, create the basket, and possess the ball. So you have to find somebody back there that you can trust, especially if you're a team that goes after it a lot, that you know is going to save that field position. The return numbers might not look flashy, okay, but we're getting to the ball, we're saving field position, and we're getting it back to the offense.
We've had a lot of guys on clinics talk about the return phase of things and teaching what they call penalty beaters. Are you guys doing anything like that to emphasize that? Obviously not to get those blocks in the back for some of those guys who are going down the field.
Yeah, we say if you see their back, turn back. So, and it's the same. I'm the receivers coach in Maryville, so it's the same thing. If I'm a receiver looking at to dig out the safety, and the safety's got his back turned to me, and I can see his numbers, number 30, number 30, I'm going back to the corner. So it's the same thing. If you're out of phase and you can't get to that guy, you see the back of his numbers, go find the next guy. Trust the returner is going to either fair catch or make the guy miss, and move on. Because again, penalties are killers, especially on special teams when you have 28 to 30 snaps of it a game. Yeah. So you got to take advantage of when you're on the field.
In taking this approach, it's not always you want to get it, and you got a lot, and you want to get the block kicks, but a lot of times when you are putting this pressure on, it disrupts the punt. You might not see as good of a punt as usual. How much do you guys get that from taking this approach?
Yeah, quite often. We get guys that will spray it out of bounds or not get really close to their average. So a lot of times we tell our punt returner, depending on how the game's going, to scoot up, maybe 5 or 10 yards closer than the average, so we can get into a position to at least fair catch the football or field it, stay square, field it on the bounce. Because once the ball is punted, you don't want to lose field position. Those yardage, that yardage is so critical. Our outside linebacker coach, Travis Mazingo, was a longtime high school coach here in Knoxville, and he really emphasizes to me in the box the importance of field position. Having that head coach mindset, as it translates to special teams and how valuable it is for the offense and the defense. So we really try to do a good job getting the right returner back there, and just every time he's out there, just reminding him where he is on the field to make the call. But you get that in the flow of the game. Sometimes, the operation's really good and they stroke it back there to their average or even further. But once you get a punt or two in, you can kind of get a feel for how the game's going to look.
Looking at your work before getting out onto the field, finding the opportunities. I know, a lot of it is going to be based on operations time. You're going to see some opportunity there. People like to find that player who they could take advantage of. What's your process? What are you guys looking for to be able to put together a punt block plan?
Yeah, so, again, after you look at the formation, after you look at the eligibles, you look at the protection, how the front line players are blocking, where there's going to be an opportunity to, find an angle. Maybe, the front line guys block down and the wings block out. Maybe there's, the shield opens up, or maybe the shield doesn't move and they just stay locked in, and then you can bend the edge to the block point. So you explain to the guys, and this is why we walk through it, because, we don't get as much film time to show, especially like a scout special teams unit, right, how they do it. So we talk about it on the field. I slow everything down. Our head coach gives us time, to talk through things rather than to rush through to get to the next period, which is valuable. But we go through our situations, we go through our blocking scheme, and we use those scout guys to just say, hey, take 3 steps, step down, or if you're in the shield, this is where the cavity is, or this is where the edge is. And then, if you're working off of an edge, you can find a 2-on-1 advantage. We always, if there's a shield, we always send at least one into the shield. Just having some built-in parameters like that where you can say, no matter what formation they're in, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to approach it. And then you add your twists and your wrinkles from there.
I feel like some people shy away from trying to block kicks when they see the shield. Where do you think maybe people are missing on that in the opportunities that might exist to block against the shield?
Well, I think you have to look at the shield players. A lot of times these are guys that sometimes teams will just put 3 offensive linemen back there. And although they're big, they're not necessarily the best athletes on the field. And you also have to remember, whether they're 5 yards back or 7 yards back, they're just standing there. Maybe they're buzzing their feet, but you got guys running full speed at them, you're going to have a chance, right? To either, get them to turn their shoulders or their hips, right? A lot of times they're not just going to knock you on your back, right? So you get full speed, full momentum at those guys, right? Whether you send, guys through the middle or guys bending off the edge, right? You're going to have some opportunity. You just have to test them, especially throughout the course of a game.
Looking at the player motivation side, and certainly getting those, just wanting to get those kicks is part of it. Do you do anything special teams wise with awards, awarding guys for whatever it might be, effort, blocking a kick, the things that you need to see?
Well, we certainly celebrate the guys in the meeting. It got to the point this year where early on in the season, there was one guy, our safety, that I think he blocked the first 3 that we had. So he was like the leader in the clubhouse, and we celebrate all the blocks in the we have a Monday morning special teams meeting after the Saturday game where we celebrate the guys that do a good job. And it got to the point where, guys on the unit were like, "Coach, like, how can I get there? How can I get there?" So like guys were like, on the field or on the sideline or at halftime, they're like, "Coach, I think I can get there." Like it became like a competition, which you love. So once somebody got one, then the next guy got one. I think we had 4 or 5 individuals that got one of the whole thing. So it was really fun to see different guys. Once once these punt teams got wise and kind of said, this is the guy that gets a lot of them, they spent their attention there. And then we had another guy who was able to sneak through and get one. So we definitely celebrate them. And, whether it's coaches or players, either the guys that blocked them or the guys that scooped and scored. We had a couple of those this year. So it was just fun to see all that unfold. But, and it's the important lesson is, on punt and return, like every single guy on that unit has to have the ability to go get it. You can't just be like, this is the 1 or 2 guys that are the blockers. Mm-hmm. No, depending on how it is, like you want to have, besides your corners and your returner, you want to have those 8 guys, all 8 of them can get there, whether it's through physicality and aggression or through speed and length, or ideally all 4 of those things. You want, everyone to have a chance at it every week.
Yeah, you mentioned the scoop and score guys. What are you doing to coach up that part of it, right? I mean, we draw the lines on everything that's going to get to the block, and then things happen. There's no more lines anymore. So what are you doing to coach those guys up to have the best chance to take the ball and put it in the end zone?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's not all just lines drawn on a page. We do kind of remind our contained players on that front line, if there's a scoop and score opportunity, it's probably going to be you guys. And that happened twice this year. One of our edge players, we call them, we have a right edge and a left edge. One of our edge players scored 2 on the scoop and score. So we tell them, right, make sure the ball is punted. Okay, they're the ones that are oftentimes buying that wing or buying that outside shield player for the block to happen. So you want to stay inside and in front of the punter. But once the ball is blocked, all right, you're hitting it, you're running, locate the ball, and then everyone else that's coming through the middle, block their nearest man, escorted into the end zone. So those are the guys that it happens to the most. Those edge players kind of become those scoop and score players, but it happened so many different ways this year. It's I'm not going to pretend that I know all the answers.
We've talked about the walkthrough. We talked about the drills. How many live reps do you actually get at this over the course of the week?
0.
None.
No, because we want guys to have confidence, and we want the technique to be done well, at a high level. And when you have these, when you have time, right, we want to just emphasize how it's done, and we'll jog through it. This is something that I learned when I visited the Dallas Cowboys a few years ago for their OTAs. And then when I coached at Lafayette College, when I was the receivers coach, there were no live reps at this. It was walk through. We'd walk through the different phases. All right, we walk through, we see where the punt team is stepping down, and then we see where the openings are, and then maybe the last rep will jog through it. So there's no full speed reps. We're not trying to get anyone hurt. We're not trying to get a false look. We want confidence going into the game. And if they do something different, then they do something different, and I'm up in the box so I can see it, and then we can make adjustments in between series or at halftime. But you don't want false looks, and you don't want guys getting rolled up for no reason.
Yeah. How much that philosophy applies to your other units on special teams as far as the way that you're practicing it and getting reps?
Yeah, this is the one unit that we don't have live looks on. The other teams we will do. We had 2 blocked PATs this year as well, and we'll go good on good for those. Because again, everyone's in tight quarters, the ball's out quickly, and you have to get the field goal unit ready for the intensity of the field goal block unit, and the same goes the other way. So really just the punt return is the only unit that we do more of a walkthrough class on grass setting. But the other ones were a little bit more confident in the scout looks, that they'll be close to the right looks. Sometimes with kickoff, we will walk through the scout KOR look once, and then we'll go into it just to make sure guys are blocking the right guys, right? But really punt return is where we're most conservative with those reps.
Yeah, well, Jake, I appreciate you getting into the details of this. You guys obviously are doing things right when it comes to blocking kicks. I just want to wish you and the Scots the best of luck here as you get through recruiting season and head into 2025.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate you having me on. This is a wonderful podcast, great opportunity for coaches to learn more about all 3 phases.
Well, there you go, Logan. Some of those details, some of those things that allow them to be the best in the country at this in 2024. As I said before we were leading into this, it's never the scheme that these guys point to. It's always the attention to detail, and I think that's just true of football. We all love to get caught up in the schemes and the plays we see on Twitter, the stuff that we draw up on our board that is always a touchdown or always a successful block kick or whatever it might be. It is always about the how behind it, and that's coaching, and that's the exciting part of getting these coaches here on the podcast.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day when Virginia Tech was always the best on special teams, and every single year. And somebody asked their coaches what they were doing special, and they said, "We're not doing anything special. It's just important to us." So teams that put an emphasis on the special teams side of things are going to reap the benefits. So congrats to Coach Flaherty and Maryville. They had a great season this year, got a playoff win, and good luck to them next year as well.
Thank you again for listening to the Coach and Coordinator podcast. Be sure to go to coachandcoordinator.com or check the description for a link to our enhanced show notes, which will include some of the drills that Coach Flaherty talked about, as well as some game clips of them blocking punts. Our enhanced show notes are a new feature for this coming year, and we have those as we finish up 2024. Follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.